I worked overnight security at a self-storage facility for about 8 months, a couple years back, out past the edge of town where the streetlights stop and it's just warehouses and gravel lots. The place had maybe 400 units total, split across 6 long rows of those roll-up metal doors, plus a smaller indoor climate-controlled section for the units people paid extra for. My job was simple: sit in the little guard booth by the front gate from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., do a walking loop of all 6 rows every couple hours with a flashlight, and call the police if the motion sensors on the perimeter fence ever tripped without an obvious reason like a raccoon or a blown-over trash can. Most nights, nothing happened at all. I brought a book. I brought my laptop sometimes. It was the easiest $400 a week I ever made, until it wasn't. It started small enough that I didn't think anything of it for weeks. Every storage facility keeps a paper log at the gate, where anyone coming in after hours has to swipe their access code, and it prints a little slip with their unit number and the time. Most of my regulars were predictable: a guy who ran a small moving business and was in and out at odd hours, a woman who came by every Friday around midnight to grab boxes for her Etsy shop, she told me once. And then there was Unit 214 in the 3rd row, which according to the log got visited almost every single night, always between 2 and 3 a.m., always for exactly 11 minutes. I never saw who it was. That's the part that took me a while to notice. The gate code would swipe, the slip would print, and 11 minutes later the same code would swipe going out. But I never once saw a car pull up to that row. I never saw a person walk past the booth. The gate had a second, smaller pedestrian entrance about 80 yards down the fence line that some renters used if they parked on the side street to save the gate fee. So I told myself that's probably what this person was doing. Made sense. I didn't think about it again for a long time. Then one night in maybe my 4th month, I was doing my 2 a.m. walk and I actually heard it. Row 3, Unit 214, a door rolling up on its track, slow, that metal groan they all make. I checked my watch out of habit. 2:04. I stood at the end of the row for a second, deciding whether to just keep walking my normal loop or actually go look, because renters are allowed to access their own units anytime. It's their property. It wasn't against any rule. But something about the sound made me walk toward it instead of away. The door to 214 was up about 2 feet, just enough to duck under, with a light on inside. I could see boxes. I could see the edge of what looked like a folded card table. And I could see, just barely, in the gap under the door, a pair of feet standing very still, facing the back of the unit, away from me. I said something like, "Hey, just doing a walkthrough, everything okay in there?" The feet didn't move. I said it again, a little louder. Nothing, no sound of someone packing or unpacking, no rustling, nothing. Just silence and those 2 feet, facing away from me, absolutely motionless, for what felt like way longer than it should have been comfortable to just stand there, not responding to someone talking to you. I crouched down like I was going to duck under and look, and the second I moved, the door came down. Fast. Like someone yanked it. I jumped back so it wouldn't catch my fingers, and I heard the lock click into place from the inside, which I remember thinking was strange, because those units don't lock from the inside. They only lock with a padlock on the outside hasp. I checked. There was no padlock on 214's door, nothing hanging from the hasp at all, and yet I could not get that door to budge even an inch. I stood out there for a solid 2 minutes deciding what to do, and I ended up just backing away and finishing my walk, telling myself it was some guy who didn't want to talk to security at 2 in the morning, which fair, some people are private, that's not a crime. I made a note in the incident log more out of habit than anything and went back to the booth. Here's the thing that actually got under my skin though, and it took me until the next morning to think of it. I pulled the facility's tenant records the next day because I had access as staff, mostly out of curiosity about who this person even was. Unit 214 had been vacant for 3 years. No active lease, no gate code assigned to it at all. Whatever code had been swiping in and out of that gate every night for months, it wasn't tied to any account in our system. I brought it up to my manager thinking maybe it was a glitch, or an old code that never got deactivated when a tenant moved out. He pulled up the logs himself, looked genuinely confused, and said the swipe records showed a code, but when he tried to trace which physical key fob or card that code belonged to, the system had no match. It existed in the access logs and nowhere else. Like someone was getting into the property using a code that had never technically been issued to anyone. We flagged it. changed the gate system that week. I figured that would be the end of it. It wasn't. About 10 days after the gate system got swapped out, on a night when there was no possible way for the old code to still work, I heard that same door roll up. 2:04 a.m., same as always, like clockwork, even though the entire access system had been replaced. I didn't go look that time. I sat in the booth and watched the row on the monitor instead, because by then we'd finally gotten a camera installed on that section after I pushed for it following the code issue. On the monitor, I watched the door to 214 roll open on its own. No person walked into frame, no person walked out. It just opened, sat open for exactly 11 minutes while the light inside the unit clicked on, and then rolled itself back down, and I heard the lock click, on a door that still to this day had no padlock installed. I quit 2 weeks later. I told my manager it was a scheduling conflict. What I didn't tell him was that on my very last night, doing my final walk past row 3 out of some combination of morbid curiosity and wanting closure, I noticed something in the dust on the concrete outside 214's door that hadn't been there before. Shoe prints. Facing out of the unit, toward the row, toward the exact spot where I always stood when I did my walkthrough. Fresh enough that the dust hadn't settled back into them yet. I never went back to find out what was actually in that unit. I don't think I want to know what's been logging 11 minutes of activity every single night in a storage locker that officially belongs to no one.